Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and this is Voice of the Global South, your weekly guide to everything that's happening in Latin America and the Caribbean, Africa, Asia and Oceania. All right then, on the show this week, cracks are emerging in the fragile alliance that catapulted 84-year-old Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus to power in Bangladesh. Will the Bangladesh Nationalist Party play ball? And more importantly, will the army sit idly by? A cargo ship makes history, sails directly from Pakistan to Bangladesh. Are the two erstwhile enemies becoming friends? And how will it impact South Asia? Hong Kong's jailing of 45 democracy activists sparks criticism from foreign governments and rights groups. And the US ramps up its military presence on the Northern Mariana Islands. We tell you why it matters for the Indo-Pacific. All that and much more coming up on Voice of the Global South. Now, the interim government of Bangladesh completed 100 days on 15th November. No grand celebrations were held, no big speeches were made either. An uneasy calm prevails in the country's capital, Dhaka. The city saw a pitched battle between the police and protesters in the months leading up to the overthrow of the government of the day. The so-called revolution is over, but protests are taking place more than ever in Dhaka. Non-stop demonstrations have been reported from the Secretariat building, the administrative nerve center of Bangladesh's government. Government Land Office employees hold a protest for higher pay and benefits. Some want protection for Sufi religious shrines. Others, such as garment workers, hold a protest over unpaid wages. Elsewhere, protesters hold a torch procession in Dhaka on 31st October to demand better treatment of minorities in the country following a sedition charge against 19 people. The procession is led by the Bangladesh United Minority Alliance after the 19 allegedly disrespected the Bangladesh national flag in the city of Chittagong. The protesters want withdrawal of the charges against the 19 who included Chinmoy Krishnadas Brahmachari, the divisional organizing secretary of ISKCON, a Hindu religious movement. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, has called for minority protection and a national process of truth and healing. The National Crisis Group is an NGO based in Belgium. It has released a report titled A New Era in Bangladesh, the first 100 days of reform. It says that the Bangladesh government led by Muhammad Yunus should balance demands for justice with the need for reconciliation, all the time staying within the bounds of the constitution in order to mitigate the danger of its decisions being invalidated later. It says that the government should seek to hold fresh elections under a reformed polling system within a realistic time frame, which should not extend beyond 18 months. The report cautions that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Bangladesh to improve governance and put checks and balances in place that would stop an autocratic regime from emerging. It warns that if the interim government falters, the country could revert to the status quo ante or worse, enter a period of military rule. The message is clear. Yunus should avoid staying in power for too long and he should build a consensus among political parties because both experience and history show that the longer an interim government stays in power, the more the doubts about its legitimacy grow. So, managing, let alone meeting public expectation will be challenging for the government. Already cracks are emerging between the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and the Yunus-led interim government. The BNP wants an early election, but the interim government is not willing to play ball. Thousands of BNP supporters rallied in Dhaka on 8th November demanding an early election. The friends turned frenemies are no longer singing from the same hymn sheet. It's all the more shocking because it was the interim government that released BNP chief Khalida Zia from house arrest and acquitted her of corruption charges. The BNP fears the Yunus-led interim government is in no mood to hold an election and that it wants to extend its rule in perpetuity. The BNP wants to avoid a repeat of 2006 when an army-controlled caretaker government stayed beyond its mandated 3 months and delayed the election by about 2 years, only to bring Sheikh Hasina back to power. Things have come to such a pass that the BNP is opposing, yes, you heard that right, opposing the interim government's proposal to ban its arch-rival, the Awami League. The BNP also suspects that the interim government might toy with the idea of reviving a -2 formula, which was invoked by some governments in the past to keep the two Begums away, Khalida Zia and Sheikh Hasina. The BNP is suspicious of the motives of student leaders, academics and others who want to delegitimize the party for their vested interests. The BNP has time and again voiced its frustration over the lack of a roadmap for a transition to democracy. Its Secretary General Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir has called on the interim government to open talks with political parties and hold an election within a quote-unquote reasonable time. Now, would it be okay if an election was held after, say, 2 or 3 years? No, he doesn't think people will accept that. Thomas Keane, an analyst with the National Crisis Group, says cracks are emerging in the fragile alliance that catapulted Yunus to power. He says that for now, Yunus and his colleagues have widespread support, but popular expectations are double-edged. For his part, Yunus is begging the country's patience.
I am not sure how much reform we will be able to make, but I promise you, if you give us the opportunity, we will complete some mandatory reforms and then go for the highly sought-after election we all are looking for. I would request you to keep patience till then. We want to create an exemplary electoral system that can be followed for years. It will save our country from annual political crisis. To ensure these, I am asking for the necessary time from you.
The government has since appointed a new Chief Election Commissioner and 4 other commissioners. Yunus says a roadmap for the next election would be unveiled after electoral reforms are completed, but he won't give a date for the election. Now, Bangladesh's Constitutional Reform Commission has to submit its recommendations to the government by 31st December. 5 other reform commissions are also likely to submit their reports by the end of December. Now, Bangladesh has long struggled with political instability and military influence. In its 53 years of independence, the country has faced 29 attempted military coups, starting with the first in 1975, just 4 years after its independence. Bangladesh appears to be heading towards not only a political reset, but also a constitutional overhaul. The country's Attorney General, Mohammad Asad-Zaman, has suggested removing the word secular from the constitution because 90% of Bangladesh's population follows Islam. So, are the fears of Bangladesh becoming an Islamic state genuine? How will the proposed changes to the constitution impact the country's minorities? Will Hindus be safe? Will the interim government stay true to its promise of holding an election? And will the military continue to watch from the sidelines or take matters into its own hands? Now, how much power the army is willing to cede in favor of the Yunus-led interim government will be critical to ensuring a peaceful democratic transition. As things stand now, an early election is not likely. Yunus has said that the timing of the election is a political decision, that people will decide how long the interim government will remain in power. Clearly, Bangladesh again stands at a familiar crossroads. Many are celebrating what they call a third independence, but there are others who are cautiously optimistic. They are wary of the recurring sounds of military boots echoing through the corridors of power in Dhaka. Recently, a cargo ship became the first in more than half a century to sail directly from Pakistan to Bangladesh. The two countries, once one nation, split in 1971 after a brutal war, with Bangladesh then drawing closer to Pakistan's rival India. But Dhaka's ties with New Delhi have frayed after a student-led revolution in August toppled Bangladesh's leader Sheikh Hasina, who fled to India. So, are Dhaka and Islamabad seeking rebooting of their ties after half a century of frosty ties? And what are its implications for South Asia? The next report breaks it down for you.
On 11th November, a cargo ship docked at Chittagong port in Bangladesh, overlooking the Bay of Bengal. It became the first ship to travel directly from Pakistan to Bangladesh in 53 years. The Panama-flagged MV Yuan Xiang Fa Zan is operated by Anuhi Guehi Sanglong Shipping of China. It first travelled from the UAE to Pakistan and then reached Bangladesh before its onward journey to Malaysia. Chittagong port authorities said that the ship brought goods from Pakistan and the UAE, including raw materials for Bangladesh's garment industry and basic foodstuffs. Previously, cargo used to be shipped from Pakistan to Bangladesh via third countries such as Sri Lanka, Singapore or Malaysia. Pakistani goods had to be offloaded onto feeder vessels in some of these countries before travelling to Bangladesh. A direct sea link between two erstwhile enemies is one of many changes that Bangladesh has witnessed in recent months, starting with the ouster of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in August after a bloody agitation by students against a controversial quota system for government jobs. The protests culminated in the escape of Hasina to India and the installation of an interim government led by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus. Since then, Bangladesh's relations with India have nosedived. The killing of Hindus in Dhaka and elsewhere in Bangladesh has only made the relationship worse. Recently, a grocer in Chittagong called the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, also known as ISKCON, a terrorist group, which angered the Hindu community in the neighborhood. The clashes that followed the Facebook post by the grocer left many injured. Hindus, who make up 8% of Bangladesh's population, have traditionally supported the Awami League headed by Sheikh Hasina. Just recently, Bangladesh's Attorney General Mohammad Asaduzzaman called for removing of socialism and secularism from the country's constitution. It has sparked fears among minorities of Bangladesh turning into an Islamic state. In sharp contrast, Bangladesh's ties with Pakistan are looking up despite decades of animosity. Bangladesh gained independence from Pakistan in 1971. It became an independent country after a 9-month liberation war against Pakistan. Bangladesh claims Pakistan committed a genocide, killing 3 million of its people and raping hundreds and thousands of women. But in the last 3 months, Bangladesh and Pakistan have taken a number of steps that indicate a reset or reboot in their relationship. In September, Muhammad Yunus met Pakistan's Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif on the margins of the UN General Assembly in the United States. The same month, Bangladesh eased import restrictions on Pakistani goods. Yunus ended mandatory physical inspection of goods imported from Pakistan. Such imports have previously required to undertake a physical inspection when the goods arrived, causing long delays. In October, Yunus cancelled certain national holidays that commemorated the 1971 Liberation War or Bangladesh's founder Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. And in November, Bangladesh lifted a ban on students from Pakistan. For its part, Pakistan announced free visas to Bangladesh business persons and certain other categories of applicants. Pakistan's High Commissioner to Dhaka, Syed Ahmed Maroof, sparked widespread discussion on social media in Bangladesh when he said that the direct shipping route was a major step in boosting trade across the region. He wrote on Facebook that the route will promote new opportunities for businesses on both sides. In a radical departure from the position adopted by the ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government, in 2022, Hasina denied permission to a Chinese-built Pakistani warship, the PNS Taimur, from docking at Chittagong port. In 2015, Hasina imposed a ban on Pakistani students following Pakistan's refusal to acknowledge the genocide and atrocities committed during Bangladesh's liberation war in 1971. Hasina established a national tribunal in 2010 to investigate war crimes committed in 1971 and bring the guilty to justice. The tribunal has since convicted and sentenced numerous individuals for crimes against humanity. The direct maritime route between Pakistan and Bangladesh poses certain challenges for India. For one, it could at some point in the future give rise to gun running and drug smuggling. Two, India has a more than 4,000 km long porous border with Bangladesh, which further complicates matters. Three, insurgents operating in India's northeastern states bordering Bangladesh and China could seek to exploit the situation. And last but not least, India would need to be watchful of a growing Pakistan-China nexus in the Bay of Bengal region. India's fears are not without reason. The Chittagong arms haul is fresh in the minds of many. In April 2004, Bangladesh's agencies seized illegal arms and ammunition in Chittagong. The weapons were meant for the United Liberation Front of Assam, also known as ULFA, which operates in the northeastern Indian state of Assam. An alliance led by Bangladesh Nationalist Party was in power at the time. New Delhi believed that the cache of weapons was also meant for other insurgent groups in India's northeast in order to destabilize the region. So will history repeat itself? For now, New Delhi is watching and waiting.
Hong Kong saw its largest trial under a national security law on 19th November. 45 pro-democracy activists have been sentenced to up to 10 years. Why were they arrested and how will it impact the future of democracy in Hong Kong? Jayant Das has more.
A Hong Kong court delivered a judgment on 19th November which has drawn criticism from around the world. 45 pro-democracy activists who were involved in the 2019 Hong Kong pro-democracy protests were jailed up to 10 years under China's national security law. The law was passed in the year 2020. The judges charged the activists with subversion. The group of activists included Benny Thai, a former legal scholar, and Joshua Wong, a student activist. All 45 were jailed for allegedly opposing a Hong Kong-China extradition law, but more importantly against Chinese influence in the politics of Hong Kong. What led to them being put behind bars? Why were they arrested in the first place? And how is their arrest linked to the infamous extradition law proposed in 2019? The activists were arrested in 2021 under a Beijing-imposed national security law for their participation in an unofficial primary election which was held in July of 2020. More than 600,000 people participated in the unofficial vote. Their aim was simple: increase the opposition's chances of blocking the pro-Beijing government's bills. China called the election illegal and an attempt at colluding with foreign powers to undermine order in the region. The election came weeks after the national security law was imposed by Beijing in response to months of pro-democracy protests. The problematic law criminalized a wide range of activities as subversion, secession, or terrorism. Some believe that the law only worked to shift much of Hong Kong's judicial powers to Beijing and thus tipped the judicial balance towards an unfair system. The 2019 protests are still fresh in the minds of many around the world. Thousands of people took to streets, clashing with police and facing arrests, all for one common goal: to fight back against the now shelved, controversial extradition law. Why was the Hong Kong-China extradition bill controversial? It was proposed by the Hong Kong government in order to plug a legal loophole so that the city doesn't become a haven for criminals. The bill, if passed, would have given powers to the Hong Kong government to consider requests from any country for extradition of criminal suspects. The law would have included countries which Hong Kong does not have an extradition treaty, including China, Taiwan, and Macau. If it had been passed, a Hong Kong chief executive would have decided upon the severity of a case if the wanted criminal from the included region could be sent for trial there. But as many opponents of the law felt at the time, serious problems remained. One, the accused would be exposed to arbitrary detention, unfair trial and torture under China's deeply flawed justice system. Two, it would lead to further erosion of Hong Kong's judicial independence from China. And three, the law would put those under risk whom Chinese government deemed in opposition to its position. In the instant case, Hong Kong authorities have justified the sentencing of the accused as a strict judgment against matters of national security.
We believe that this sentencing reflects the severity of the crime and also demonstrates that crimes endangering national security must be strictly punished. The harsh sentences send a clear message to society that we will not tolerate any actions that threaten national security, including attempts to subvert state power. We will thoroughly review the sentencing details and consider whether to appeal the individual sentences.
The sentencing has drawn criticism from around the world. Concerns have been raised about the legality of the judicial process. US Department of State spokesperson Matthew Miller condemned the jailing. Miller said, the US will take steps to impose visa restrictions on certain Hong Kong officials who were responsible for implementation of the national security law. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong said her government is gravely concerned by the sentences for Australian citizen Gordon among those arrested. The UN Human Rights Office voiced concern about the use of security law in Hong Kong to jail 45 pro-democracy activists, but said it had no plans to cut off its ongoing dialogue with China.
We are gravely concerned by the use of these security laws and the breadth to criminalise conduct protected by human rights to freedom of expression, peaceful assembly and association.
China has retaliated by saying that jailing is the appropriate action of the state as it won't allow unlawful activities in the name of freedom. Furthermore, Hong Kong media tycoon and pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai was identified as the main planner of the anti-China Hong Kong rebellion.
Hong Kong is a society governed by the rule of law. It's a basic principle that laws must be complied with and violations of the law must be punished. And no one can engage in unlawful activities in the name of freedom and attempt to escape from the law. Li Zieng is the main planner and participant of the anti-China and Hong Kong rebellion, as well as an agent and frontrunner of the anti-Chinese forces.
Jimmy Lai has denied these accusations, pleading not guilty on both counts of charges against him. Speaking on the second day of his trial on 21st November, he said that he had not sought to incite hatred against China or Hong Kong authorities by calling for protests to defend basic human rights. A day earlier, Lai denied any hand in influencing the policies of other governments, including the US, towards China and Hong Kong. With the increasing grip of Beijing on Hong Kong, some foreign governments fear for the autonomy that the former British colony once enjoyed. In Beijing-controlled Hong Kong, people's freedom and future hangs in balance. Jayan Das for DD India.
Some islands in the Indo-Pacific are so small that you can't spot them on the map, but they wield disproportionate influence on world affairs. Take, for example, Northern Mariana Islands. It lies north of Australia and east of the Philippines. For the people there, history is repeating itself, only this time as a defense strategy in the shadow of rising global tensions. As Ayushi Ahuja reports, the world is shifting gears in the Indo-Pacific. The message is clear: peace through strength. But will an arms race lead to deterrence or disaster?
The US is making its next big move. a massive $800 million upgrade to its military presence on the Northern Mariana Islands. At the heart of this upgrade is Tinian Island, where the US plans to breathe a new life into the long-abandoned airfield. It comes amid rising tensions with China. Tinian, which is located 2,400 kilometers south of Japan's capital Tokyo, is no stranger to military history. During World War II, it was a launchpad for some of the war's most decisive missions, including the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. Fast forward to today, Tinian is gearing up to host a revamped airfield, part of Washington, D.C.'s broader Indo-Pacific strategy. The US military says it's about readiness and deterrence, but the timing tells its own story. Just last month, China test-fired an intercontinental ballistic missile, also known as an ICBM, into the Pacific Ocean. It wasn't your usual inland test site. It happened in international waters, raising eyebrows and fears across the region. An ICBM is designed to carry a nuclear warhead. It has a range of more than 5,500 kilometers. China's latest ICBM is called the Dongfeng 41. The DF-41 has a range of up to 15,000 kilometers. China's military expansion is no secret. The DF-41 missile, operational since 2017, symbolizes its ambitions. Beijing insists that it follows a defensive policy, but its actions tell a different story, one of deterrence and dominance. Although it is said that the DF-41 could reach the US mainland, Beijing claims that the test wasn't aimed at anyone. But it is hard to ignore the message, we can if we want to.
China's People's Liberation Army rocket force launched an intercontinental ballistic missile carrying a dummy warhead to the high seas in the Pacific Ocean at 8:44 on September 25th. The missile fell into expected sea areas. This test launch is a routine arrangement in our annual training plan. It's in line with international law and international practice and is not directed against any country or target.
Back in the Northern Marianas, the governor isn't mincing his words. Arnold Palacios says that the missile test underscores why this $800 million defense project has to happen. Listen to Arnold Palacios, the governor of Northern Mariana Islands. He says, and I quote, "We are the second chain of violence. If something happens in Taiwan or the South China Sea, we will be impacted." It is not just about Tinian. Guam, the hub of US military power in the Indo-Pacific, is also part of this chessboard. Together, these islands are critical pieces in the US's strategy to counter China's growing military might in the region. Tinian, home to about 3,500 residents, sits at a critical crossroads in the Indo-Pacific. Given its proximity to key US bases in Guam and other locations, the island is being positioned as a strategic backup to meet certain mission requirements, quotes a top US official. And it's not just about planes. The US is leasing 2/3 of the island for defense and military development. This includes a $384 million airfield rehabilitation and an additional $409 million for operations, training facilities, and equipment upgrades. This isn't just an airfield. It's an all-in-one military hub. Plans include a training site for combat skills with multiple ranges, landing zones, and base camps. It's about creating realistic, joint combat training in a tropical environment. China is not just expanding its missile capabilities, it's working to create a world-class military by mid-century. That's a backdrop against which Washington, D.C. is ramping up its efforts in the Indo-Pacific. Now, no one wants a military base in their backyard. But as the governor of Northern Mariana Islands puts it, the best deterrent is to have a good defense. And with China flexing its muscles, the stakes in the Indo-Pacific couldn't be higher. Ayushi Ahuja for DD India.
And with that, it's a wrap on this week's edition of Voice of the Global South. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.